The Indianapolis Colts are reported to have 3 finalists for their head coach opening, with more names to be revealed after the weekend. So, how do we feel about those reported 3 candidates and a fourth that actually just came off the list earlier today? So, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my colleague and fellow writer at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, we just talked a couple days ago going through who we predicted the finalists were. Now some names have came out. How you feeling right now about this Colts head coaching search that is now deep into its third week? How you doing?
You know, it's there's been a lot of drama too. There's been some petitions. There's been some guys that have come off the board. There's been a former coach that got canned over the phone that's now no longer a former head coach. I mean, there's a lot. I don't know how I feel about it from the Colts perspective because it seems very stressful right now. And everyone's kind of on pins and needles is the way I would put it. But hey, it's a good time. Got another future coming, hopefully, and we'll see what happens.
There's the NFL never sleeps, whether it's the off season, whether it's the middle of the season. There's always things to talk about in the world of the NFL. And yeah, with gauging online the fan base, a lot of people are on edge right now as the Colts inch closer to deciding who's going to be the next leader of this team. And it could go a bunch of different ways. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, of the guys that are officially coming in or have already came in for second interviews with the Indianapolis Colts. But before we get started, as always, I want to thank all of our listeners, all of the people that watch our show. Last episode, again, another banger. You guys came out, you loved the show. We're seeing numbers like never before, so please, let's continue that momentum, guys. Go ahead and follow us on all the things. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Horseshoe Huddle on Twitter at Colts on FN. Subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and hit that little bell so you know when Drake and I are going live, because pretty soon we're going to have some guests that are coming on the show. And of course, as the Colts get closer to announcing their head coach, you better believe that when they do, Drake and I will be here that night live to give our gut reaction on everything that went down. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy time here over the next few weeks, especially with the Indianapolis Colts. But Drake, without further ado, let's talk about the 3 finalists that the Colts have. We're going to break down these finalists, give some pros, give some cons, give our thoughts on these finalists, and if we think that they really could end up with the job. So before the start of this episode, this episode was supposed to be about the 4 head coaching candidates, but literally a couple hours ago, one man pulled his name out of the hat, and we'll probably speak about him last in this, just to kind of go through things. But hey, Wyatt Law. Ballard will nail the head coach and quarterback combo. It's always darkest before the dawn. You love to see the optimism from you. Good to see you, buddy. Stats Matt, the third host of this show. Let's skip one of them. Well, Stats Matt, too bad. We got to talk about the one that you want to skip. And that's the guy we're going to start out with first, because he is the one that actually completed his second interview first, Jeff Saturday. So the Colts sat down with Jeff Saturday on Wednesday. He was the first of the finalists to get a second interview. In that second interview, it's reported that that's where he laid out who his staff would be if he was hired full-time on as the head coach. We don't know exactly who would be on that staff. That really hasn't been reported or leaked out yet. But Drake, I mean, I feel like we talk about this guy at least once a week now, and I know some Colts fans are really getting nervous that Jeff Saturday could end up with the full-time job when this is all said and done. What say you? Do you really think that he is a serious candidate for this?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. And you know, there was somebody on Twitter, I can't remember who, but they were like, oh, you know. And a lot of people said this. Irsay's he's too smart for this. He's not that dumb. Okay, he's not going to make such a ridiculous decision. He's tuned into the fan base. He knows, what they want to. He knows what they want. He's not gonna do wrong by them. I also replied, he hired the guy. All right, he literally hired the guy when you had John Fox, Bubba Ventrone, and Gus Bradley on your staff. He took a guy that got hired in no time somewhere else and fired him midseason over the phone. Look, until Irsay makes a different decision than something that is meddling in nature, I do not put it past him in any way, shape, or form to overstep somebody. I think he's starting to turn into his dad a little bit as he's getting older. I hope not. But I mean, I do see a little bit of frustration and a little bit of I know what I'm doing kind of an attitude from Irsay, and it's a little bit scary for some fans.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I think the thing that I keep harping on is this: we knew that Jeff Saturday was going to get a second interview. I even said last week or in our last episode that Jeff Saturday would get a second interview and would be one of the finalists. That's what Jim Irsay wanted, and he wanted to get a full shot at this. But I just can't see how Jim Irsay could possibly hire Jeff Saturday as the full-time head coach. I really can't, because I mean, you had mentioned it. There is a petition out there that Colts fans have started saying that Jeff Saturday should not be the head coach of this team. Every single time Jim Irsay tweets, you look at the comments under that tweet, and it's just hundreds of people saying, "Do not hire Jeff Saturday, no matter what it is." And Ballard is not going to be the one to recommend Jeff Saturday. He was against the hire in November. There's no way he's going to put forth Jeff Saturday as one of his 2 to 3 guys that he thinks should be the head coach of this team. I don't think that Carly Irsay, Jim Irsay's daughter, would do that either. Carly Irsay has been the one with Chris Ballard and Dodds going through these head coaching interviews, not Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay joins in the second round, but I just don't think that Jim Irsay would go through all this, because it would be going against his general manager once again. It would be going against the fan base, and Jim Irsay is very in tune with the fan base. It would cause a lot of friction, not only within the franchise, within that building, but outside of the building. And you just can't happen when you're already kind of in disarray. You need to have a GM and a head coach on the same front if you want to proceed and get things back on track. So it's in my opinion, I'm not too worried yet. I mean, it is still a possibility, but I think the chances of it happening are very slim.
And here's the thing: I want to be the one for and I'm sure Andrew would agree and would support me in this. Is look, Jeff Saturday is a fantastic human being. I've seen some pretty brutal, like, oh, we hate Saturday. It's like, look, guys, he didn't hire himself, okay, and he's pulling the sources that he can. All right. That's all he's doing. He wants the coaching job. Don't hate him for that. He's only getting who he can get. Don't hate him for that. If he pulls Dan Orlovsky off the set of ESPN and says, "This guy's my OC," don't criticize him. That's the best he can get. That's why everyone's saying don't hire him, because he doesn't have the connections like a Raheem Morris. He doesn't have the staff building efficiency because he's never done it. So you could be looking at another horrific season, maybe even worse, because teams know what they're facing with Saturday, and that's a completely inexperienced guy. So great player, great man. Not his fault he's in the position to be a head coach. I mean, he could have turned it down. No one's going to do that. But look a little bit more Irsay's way and maybe push that Saturday shouldn't be the coach with a little bit less anger, I guess.
Right.
So in a healthier manner.
317 Sports Ball says the petition had under 50 signatures before 8 a.m. yesterday, and it could reach 3,000 by the top of the hour this evening. There's a lot of people have found that petition, and it's growing very quickly. Wyatt Law says I'm no fan of Saturday dragging his ESPN buddies into the fray to drum up support, and that's fair. Another thing. Not only has this been something that we've noticed over the past couple of days, Drake and I, but the local media in Indy have reported on this as well. You see a lot of the national media reporting or tweeting out that Jeff Saturday is a serious contender. He's Irsay's number one option. Well, then you hear the local guys, the guys that are actually plugged into what's happening, like Kevin Bowen Greg Doyle, Zach Kiefer, some of the guys that are on the ground there in Indy. And Doyle wrote a piece about this today where Jeff Saturday has been asking for the numbers, the phone numbers of the local media to try to have better press put out there about him in regards to this job. So when all this is happening, and I said it's smokescreen season, there's a lot of rumors going on around there. The smokescreens are coming from the candidates as well. You hear this happening where Jeff Saturday is deliberately going to his friends in the media to try to get a positive spin out there on the various things that people are saying, or that he's like a top candidate for this job, when in reality, I think that's far from the case. I think with all the candidates, all the good candidates that the Colts and Ballard have interviewed over the past couple weeks, he doesn't stand a chance against these guys. So it's his last second kind of Hail Mary to try to get the media on his side, when in reality, it's not going to change things, in my opinion. Michael says, no way they can make Saturday head coach when you have all these big time names that have come to interview. And you're 100% correct, Michael. Great to have you on the show here. But it was just what I was saying. It would be a huge slap in the face to all these coaches, and it would make the Colts such an undesirable place to be for any other coaches that would want to be here, because you have a meddling owner. There's no structure at the top, and he's just going to hire who he wants to hire, his favorites, if you will. Jason Larger Sports Stories podcast. Good to see you, man. It's great to have you here. Chad, always good to see you here too as well. And he said, I've said this for a couple weeks. Irsay is going to keep him around to make it seem like a legit contender, but he's not going to get it. Chad, you're kind of saying what I'm saying. And that's what I mean. Is Saturday is going to be around. They're giving him that courtesy second interview, but I really don't think he's going to be the candidate moving forward. So, Drake, let's move on to our next one here. The guy that interviewed today. He had the second interview today. Denver Broncos defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero had his second interview with the Colts today, where Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard were in there. What do you think about Evero? He is a very interesting candidate coming out of Denver.
Evero, I think a lot of people were like, ooh, he's getting an interview, but no one really guessed and thought, he would sneak through to the second interview. He's been a sleeper candidate. He's continuing to impress people, and it's kind of behind the scenes impressing, where people are still like, who is this guy? He's kind of, I think it was No Horsing Around. The podcast said, he's kind of this like figure that no one really knows about. And it's very true, but boy, he was able to take a very bad Denver team and make them look pretty dang good on defense. And they had great numbers. I think that he's born to be a head coach. I think he's got the kind of mentality for it. And clearly he impressed Ballard. So it's still a little bit, hazy on the details though, but he could be a really good head coach and a young guy that has a good mind.
Yeah, Evero has really impressed in this interview cycle, not only with the Colts, but he impressed with the Houston Texans. I think he got an interview with the Arizona Cardinals as well, but he only has that one defensive coordinator for the Broncos. He was with the Rams before that as an assistant, but I mean, he did a damn good job last year in Denver, holding that team together when that offense was faltering. I mean, I think over games that the Broncos played, the defense held their opponents to under 20 points. And if the offense that with Russell Wilson just would have scored over 20 points, we could have been talking about a Denver Broncos team that was fighting for a playoff spot in all reality. So I think he's a young candidate. I don't know if he's going to get a coaching job this time around. I think he's probably going to need some more experience. But the fact that after just 1 year as a coordinator and he's already generating these looks and impressing in interviews, which is something that one of the Colts candidates, Eric Bieniemy, has been reported over the years, hasn't really impressed in interviews. So Evero is on track. And I don't know if it'll be with the Colts. I don't know if it'll be this cycle, but I do think within the next couple, at least, I think we're talking about Ejiro Evero being a head coach in the National Football League.
Well, and people want to turn towards the younger guys now, and by younger, you're talking, I mean, heck, even maybe early 30s now. And Evero fits the mold, and he's got more experience than what people think. I mean, I think he's been in the league since like 2010 or even earlier than that. So this guy who's just been around, he's seen the NFL, he knows the ins and outs, did a great job coaching the defense. I do agree with you, Andrew. I think that he's probably not going to get it this cycle, but kind of like Bubba Ventrone, might not be ready yet, but he's got it written all over him that it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Evero gives off those same vibes that Ventrone does. Brent Landis says, "I'm hoping the coaches from Philadelphia and Cincinnati get a second interview." And then we're going to talk about our predictions here about the more candidates. But those guys, the reason it hasn't came out yet probably is because both those guys play this weekend, and I think the Colts are waiting to interview guys from those teams that are playing in conference championship weekend. Wait to interview them at the beginning of next week. Brian asked, "What about Sean Payton?" And I think we've answered this before, but Sean Payton was never on the Colts radar. I don't think there was much interest from Sean Payton to come to Indianapolis, nor was there really any interest from the Colts to interview Sean Payton. And Drake, you wrote a story about this, so you can dive in on why the Colts didn't interview Sean Payton.
Well, in short, they're asking for a first round pick. All right, so you're probably losing your number 4 pick if you get Peyton, and they want more. That means you're probably going to lose next year's first round pick for Sean Payton, because there's a clause. I won't go into the ins and outs of it now, but where it's like if it's a coach that you're exchanging, they get an additional pick, and the player you're trading, I don't think it even counts. So they can ask for more.
Right.
Then you're asking for $20 to $25 million. Sean McVay is the highest paid guy right now, and it's like, I think 18 million. So he's asking for more. And then there was just no interest. There were 5 openings. Okay, there were five openings. He showed interest towards 4 and didn't towards 1. The Colts were the one. So I mean, it was pretty mutual. I think Ballard and Peyton probably like mutually looked at each other somewhere in the universe and said, nah, and just kept on going. So
right. And the thing about Sean Payton too, there's a reason Sean Payton has not been asked back for a second interview by any of these other teams. So yeah. Sean Payton is not a very hot candidate right now.
Yeah.
I like this question by Wyatt Law. Evero might be the smartest candidate of them all, and I'd wonder what caliber staff he'd be able to assemble. That's a key question, because as Chad brings this up to everyone saying it has to be offensive minded coach, if a defensive coordinator is brought in for the coach, it depends on what offensive coordinator they bring in and the rest of the coaching staff. That Evero is still so young in his coaching career that his connections aren't nearly as deep as some of the others, especially when you're looking on the defensive side of the ball. So it might be tough for him to necessarily bring in that kind of staff really to kind of back things up. So again, it's going to be interesting to see what they think, because Evero, he might shock us all. And by the end of next week, Ejiro Evero could be the next head coach of the Colts. But the third and final candidate that has been reported and will have his second interview tomorrow, Los Angeles Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris. Drake, I know you're a huge fan of Raheem Morris. Tell me what you think about the defensive coordinator from LA.
I mean, the thing about Raheem Morris is the experience that sticks out. He's coached wide receivers. I've gone over this a bunch of times. He's coached wide receivers, defensive backs. He's been a head coach at age 32 and taken Josh Freeman. Does anybody know who I'm saying right off the bat? Probably not. You're going to go look it up and realize his only good season, arguably, was with Raheem Morris. And I mean, Raheem Morris is just the guy. He's got all the connections in the NFL. He's got quarterback coaches that I can't remember the names right now, but one's in LA with him that helps Stafford. Another is in San Francisco helping Brock Purdy right now. I mean, you're talking about Raheem Morris here, who would be able to get one of those 2 quarterback coaches into an offensive coordinator role probably, and be able to help a guy and mentor a guy, and maybe mold him into the next franchise quarterback. So, I mean, he's got all the connections. You talk about Saturday having none. On the opposite end of that, Raheem Morris has all of them. So, I mean, he could pretty much pull anybody and get respect from him.
Yeah, Raheem Morris. I mean, he got his first head coaching opportunity when he was 32 years old, taking over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like you said, that second season he went 10-6, and then things kind of went downhill from there. The next time he kind of got an opportunity was in 2020 when he became the interim head coach for the Atlanta Falcons after Dan Quinn was fired. Went 4-7 there, and ever since that, when he was hired as the Buccaneers head coach back in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. Uh, he's been kind of, ever since he was fired from that job, he's been building up to get a second chance. He's now in his mid 40s, and like you said, Drake, all of those connections that Raheem Morris has to build a quality staff around a young quarterback, because he's worked in the with Sean McVay, where he's worked with Kyle Shanahan, he's worked on both sides of the ball. He has those connections from both of those offensive gurus, both of their coaching trees that he can pull assistance from to help mold a young quarterback, get an offensive coordinator that could really tailor an offense to a rookie quarterback that's going to be coming in. So I think that out of those three, Raheem Morris is definitely the favorite, I would say, out of those. We heard that he killed it in his first interview, but the interview he thought went very well, and the Colts thought it went very well as well. There's definitely mutual interest there. We'll have to see. But I think the biggest thing outside of the connections for Raheem Morris is what his players have said about him. I mean, and this is a big contrast from what the Colts players said about Jeff Saturday, too. It's when you talk to former players or current players that Raheem Morris has coached, they always talk about how Raheem Morris teaches them something new every single day. And they're always learning and getting better under Raheem Morris. You don't hear that when people talked about Jeff Saturday. You said, oh, well, he was held us accountable. He showed up every day. He was always positive, but you didn't really hear about how he made the players better. And as a coach, yes, you have to be a leader. You have to be someone that holds somebody accountable. But if you're not making players better or putting players in the best position to win, you're not going to be a successful head coach in the NFL. And that's why Raheem Morris, it seems like, over those years and gaining that experience, has really gained that and really added that to his repertoire as a possible head coach.
Well, and when you think about these players, yes, the intensity, the heart, the passion, that's half of it. Okay. You can't teach that. You have to inject that into your players, like somehow, some way. Saturday's got that covered. Guess what though? If you can't get them to improve techniques, if you can't get them to work in unison, if you can't get them to win games, none of that matters, because they're not going to feel confident. They're going to feel like crap. And I mean, Chris Ballard even said it. He said, we gave up when when the going got tough, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you can inspire your players to try really, really hard, but can you get them to win, which is the ultimate form of confidence and belief? Is if you get them to win while showing that passion and drive, I mean, they'll probably follow you into the gates of hell. So it's like, that Saturday could get half of it done. You got to get it all done though.
Absolutely. Let's check and see what the comments are saying. Wyatt Law again. Raheem Morris probably has the best Rolodex of potential assistants and has to be the leader in the clubhouse. I would agree. As of right now, I think that Raheem Morris would be the leader, especially out of these three candidates. Colts Loyalist says that Raheem Morris gives us the best chance at keeping Bradley. Now, that might be tough with somebody that was hired by the Carolina Panthers today. Maybe he'll want to bring old Gus Bradley down south to be his defensive coordinator. We'll talk about that in a bit. Joe, we love you, buddy. Good to see you. Glad you could make it to a live show and comment there. Always love to see you there. Let's see. And here's another one from 317 Sports Ball. Morris worked for Mike Shanahan in Washington too. So that is a good point. That's why I think just when you're talking about Morris, everything is there, and that's why when you're talking about the connection to Ballard, what he can bring in, it just makes him an easy pick to be the Colts' next head coach. So let's briefly touch on Dan Quinn, who was supposed to be the fourth finalist, but today he informed not only the Colts but the Broncos and the Cardinals as well that he was removing his name and going back to Dallas. Honestly, I don't think Dan Quinn was one of the favorites here in Indianapolis, and maybe that played a part. I think that maybe he realized he wasn't going to be one of the finalists for any of the coaching jobs, and that's where he pulled back. What do you think, Drake?
I think you're right. I think the only position he was truly being considered for was Denver. And, they've been linked to Sean Payton, but I mean, that might not even happen, but they're definitely not linked to that. So as far as like the entire situation that went down with Dan Quinn, I'm really not surprised because he has something really special there in Dallas. He's got good players. He's got a really good system that he did fantastic with. And I mean, they had opportunities to win that game. They really did. They had opportunities to continue on in the playoffs, but it wasn't completely on Dan Quinn. So I think it's a good fit for him just to stay there. I mean, if he didn't get the Denver job, I can't really envision any other of the 4 other teams hiring Dan Quinn. So
right. So yeah. So as of right now, the Colts list of finalists sits at 3, but we know it's going to grow. The Colts are going to have 6 to 7, maybe even 8 finalists for this head coaching job. So while only 3 have been announced or reported on right now, we know there's going to be others. So let's do some predicting here. And like I said, a lot of those names are probably going to come out early next week after the conference championship games come and go this weekend. So Drake, give me your let's do this. We'll do 3 predictions of who will be a finalist.
Okay.
And then let's do a 4th wild card. So give me your 3 that you are really convinced will be interviewing for the Colts head coaching job, and then someone that people might not be thinking about.
I think let's see. I'll go with, maybe this is just a dream, but I'll go with Brian Callahan.
Woo!
I really hope that they get Brian Callahan, and on the same kind of down the same path, I hope they get Mike Kafka. And I do think that this was going to be my wild card, but this is one that I realistically think might actually get a nod, and that's Rich. I think it's Bisaccia, just because of his ridiculous experience. I think it's probably more than anyone else on the board. So, plus he was able to coach the Raiders to the playoffs as an interim.
Absolutely. And looks like you got some fans there. I'm Team Callahan, guys. Love Raheem, but just feel it's a wasted opportunity to not nab a young offensive coach that has been ultra successful.
Yeah.
And I agree. Mike saying to bring back Tony Dungy. That would be interesting there. But yeah, I you got to free me. You already know where I'm going. Brian Callahan is my number 1 choice to be the Colts head coach. I am on the Callahan train. I have been from the very beginning. I think it would be an absolute home run, and I would expect Brian Callahan to be brought back for a second interview, and that to be announced early next week. No matter if the Bengals win or lose, I think that's going to happen. I think that Shane Steichen will be asked to come back for a second interview because of his work with Jalen Hurts and the running game, like we talked about earlier this week. The way he's able to create with that running game, and you can imagine Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss kind of in that same situation. I think Shane Steichen is there. I'm going to go as my 3rd candidate. I'm going to go Eric Bieniemy. I think Bieniemy does get a second interview. I don't think he's going to get the job, though. I really don't. But I think with the connections there, I think Bieniemy does get a second interview. And then my wild card, which may not be a wild card, but I think my wild card is going to be Bubba Ventrone. I think Bubba Ventrone, it comes and gets a second interview with the Colts, whether it's this weekend or next week. But I mean, Ballard's really loves Bubba Ventrone. The Colts locker room really loves Bubba Ventrone. So I think he might get that second interview, and I'd be all for it, honestly.
Yeah, and I forgot my wild card. I actually was going to have it as Eric Bieniemy, just because I was fighting myself because Steichen. It seemed like with the Panthers he didn't interview well, but that was also the Panthers. I know they were looking for something different. It seems that Irsay and Ballard might see that as, maybe that's not a guy that we want to interview. But I was kind of fighting myself on Bisaccia and Bieniemy, but I say Bieniemy is a wild card just because it's like it might be even saying to Ballard, even with the connections, like, man, still, I love you, but you haven't been able to get a job interviewing with half of the NFL over
Right.
4 seasons. That's concerning. There's something there that makes that happen, and I still think that he'll get one though. I do.
Right, right, and that's what I think. It's like it seems it's been all defensive so far. So I think the Colts are probably going to hit heavy offensive coaches next week, and then we might be talking Wednesday or Thursday of the Colts hiring their next head coach. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think we're very far away. I think this only has about a week left in it, and I think by the end of next week we're going to be on here talking about who's the next head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Whether we're celebrating because it is Brian Callahan or Raheem Morris, or we have 100 people blowing up in our chat because Jeff Saturday is back as the head coach.
Who's going to lead the charge on LOS?
Yeah. We will have to see. But hey, I mean, it's the Colts off season. You know, everything is going to be absolutely crazy. So the last thing we're going to talk about here tonight, we're going to throw it back and we're talk about some Frank Reich. So if you don't know yet, Frank Reich today was announced to be the new head coach for the Carolina Panthers. He beat out Steve Wilkes for the job. Those two were the two finalists there. And honestly, good for Frank Reich, man. I mean, he was not out of a job long. He got fired from the Colts on November 7th. Today is January 26th. So about 2.5 months that he was out of a job. But I honestly think the Carolina Panthers got a good one in Frank Reich.
Well, they're going to be drafting a quarterback very likely. All right. So you talk about you're taking a guy that knows the quarterback position, played the quarterback position, took a guy like Nick Foles, got him on par to win in the playoffs and look better than he probably should have. And he also took Carson Wentz and got him to the best possible scenario he could in Philly. And I know it didn't work in Indy, but he played him to a 27 touchdown and 7 interception season. Okay. So this is a guy who understands the position. It just didn't work out with Indianapolis. I'm telling you, though, he is going to inject something into a rookie quarterback. It's a very safe, high floor type of hire for the Panthers. I think it's perfect. And, you know, kudos to Frank. He, I think I put that he was 40-33-1. Not the most impressive record, but who knows what he can do with a guy that is consistently there and doesn't retire, 1 year after, he's actually there with good reason, of course.
Yeah, he was 40-33-1 with a new starting quarterback every single year of his Colts tenure. And I know a lot of people were dogging Frank Reich at the end of his tenure here in Indianapolis, but when you look back on it, what he did with this offense was honestly crazy. I mean, he was hit for we'll go through the 4 full seasons of his tenure in Indianapolis. The first year, the Colts were 5th in total offense with Andrew Luck. The second year, on the back of Luck retiring 2 weeks before the season started, they ended up 16th in total offense with Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback. The next year, they were 9th with a 38-year-old Phillip Rivers, who was on the cusp of retirement. Then the year after that, with Carson Wentz, they were 9th again in total offense. So again, I think I've always been at this, that it was probably time for Reich to move on at Indy, but the Colts did a disservice to him by not, and Reich's partially at fault too, but not getting him a young quarterback for him to mold. And in Carolina, he's going to have the opportunity to do that. Carolina has the 9th pick in the draft. As Chad brings up a good question, Carolina has the 9th pick. Do you see them trying to trade it to Chicago and take the quarterback from Indy? I don't know if they're going to have enough draft capital to get up to 1. I mean, if they fall in love with a guy, they certainly might try to do it. But I think that there's going to be, if Indy wants to trade up, Chicago was much likely to go back to 4 than they are to 9.
Very true.
But a quarterback to keep an eye on with the Carolina Panthers is Will Levis. Because I think Will Levis, the traits that he has, how smart of a player he is, he's a big guy. He's a guy that has a very quick release and can get the ball out quickly in a short, quick passing Frank Reich offense. offense, I think Will Levis would be an incredible fit there in Carolina to learn with Frank Reich. That I think that would be a great pick, and someone that maybe the Carolina Panthers wouldn't necessarily have to trade up to 1 or trade up to 3 to get Will Levis. We'll have to see how things play out, but I think Will Levis in Carolina would be a great fit with Frank Reich.
Well, and he's been compared to Carson Wentz in so many ways, and one of those is his body type. He's a little bit of a bigger guy. I mean, good lord, he's like 240 pounds. There's clips of him destroying people running the ball. I mean, he's a force to be reckoned with physically. So I think that's a perfect that's a Frank Reich type of quarterback right there. So I wouldn't even be surprised if they took a chance, did whatever they have to do to go get one of those 4. I know that Anthony Richardson's also been linked, quote unquote, to the Panthers, but he's such a wild card. You don't even know where he's going to fall. But you're right. I think Will Levis out of the 4 is a perfect fit for Frank Reich.
Right. And I honestly, I hope Frank succeeds there in Carolina. Frank was their first starting quarterback. He threw their first touchdown pass in Carolina Panthers history. I'm really rooting for Frank Reich down there. And I think there's a very good chance that Reich succeeds. That if you look at it, that division is wide open for the taking.
Oh, yeah.
So they get the quarterback right. They already got a pretty damn good head coach. I think Frank Reich can succeed there in Carolina. So, and it's Colts loyalists said a few years from now, Panthers versus Colts, Irsay's day of reckoning. That'd be wild. I mean, the Colts do play the Panthers next year in Carolina. So
yes,
the Colts will see their former head coach very, very soon. But that's it for us tonight here on the show. Again, appreciate everybody for commenting. The show was a lot of fun, as it is every night with you guys. Shout out to Colts loyalists, Wyatt Law, Chad. Let's see here. I want to just give me Joe for coming on the show. Brian, Michael, 317 Sports Ball. You guys are all awesome. I really appreciate you guys coming out, supporting the show, and making the show fun. Again, please go ahead and follow us on all the things. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that little bell so you know when Drake and I are going live each and every episode. Drake, I know you've been writing away for the site on horseshoehuddle.com. What are some of the pieces that you got out right now?
Well, a couple of them are both pro football focused type of articles where I use PFF analytics, but talk about the best free agent signing for the Colts, which was top 5 for the NFL, and the best player and the biggest surprise from 2022. Believe it or not, there's some silver linings from that year. There are. Good things happened. Okay.
Good things did happen. And I got a piece out about Frank Reich and him going to the Panthers and what the next perspectives of the Colts head coaching job could be. So you want to make sure you're tuned into Horseshoe Huddle for all the news, because I think things are about to get really wild here in the next week. That's all I'll say. But Colts loyalists, thanks for the thumbs up. Chad, we appreciate you too. Goats. I always can't say your name. Is it Masitis? Anyways, I'm sorry, buddy, but hey, I appreciate it. And leave the light on from Wyatt Law. We will be back Monday night to talk some more Colts football with you guys and give you all the latest. But until then, have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.